We have a returning guest, Artie Maren, who talks about being on the Class 8 auditor course for Scientology on the Flagship Apollo and the humiliation of being thrown overboard by L. Ron Hubbard and the different people in the Sea Organization for errors that were made in auditing people. We hope you find Mary's stories interesting and entertaining. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? It's Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm your host, and my co-host is Janis Gillham Grady. Hello, Janis. How you doing?
G'day, Mark. G'day, everybody. And yeah, I'm doing good. I usually do good anyway. So
yeah. Life is
I
good.
Hope everyone else is.
We're moving forward.
Yeah. We got we've been doing lots of interviews. We haven't released them all, but I'm going to be taking a little time off with the coming of my 2 grandbabies. So we're trying to stack some things up and so that we don't have this big lag of nothing. And we just keep you all constantly briefed on history.
That's right. And we really appreciate the new people that are watching our show too. I mean, we've gotten quite a few new subscribers, and we want to welcome you to our channel. And you can always go back and watch our other videos, but we try and put out at least 1 to 2 videos a week, and we'll continue to do so going into the new year. So anyway, Janis, why don't you tell everybody about our returning guest today?
Yeah, we have Artie Maren coming back, Artie Maren Freeman. She was married to Artie Maren, who was in the Guardians Office in the 70s and 80s. And then Frankie Friedman, who was one of the original SEAL members from Las Vegas. And she's had her own field practice and continues with her delivery of Scientology technology, though she has nothing to do with that other organization. So let's bring Mary on.
Hello,
hey,
Mary.
Hi, nice to be back. Okay.
Yeah, you are full of information and talking about the technology and the winds and that type of thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say again today.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought of some things that I didn't say last time that I should have said, which is when I first was coming in and I just found out about the Church of Scientology, which at that time was called the org. It wasn't called the church. Church came as a word to identify. It came quite a bit later. It was the org. But anyway, I was with my mom at the time in Queens. We were living there. And I was reading all the books and telling her what I found in the books and how interesting it was. And then when she told me that she wasn't involved at all finding out about, she was doing some sort of religious thing, some religious thing she was trying to do to get more healthy because she had a kind of a cyst or a growth on her rib cage area. So I went in, I said, well, maybe I can help you with that because they have all kinds of things that they can do for people in the org. So I went there and I said, my mother has this sort of growth or cyst or something, and she's afraid to go to the doctor to find out what it is. And I thought maybe you have some procedure that I could use on her. And I didn't have any training or nothing at the time. I had the comm course and that was about it. And they said, well, yeah, you could run her on an assist process. And they wrote down the commands of the assist process. And it was with that body's hands, you keep that body part, whatever it is, from going away. And then you ask, did you keep it from going away? And then you ask, what is its color? What is its temperature? What is its size? What is its consistency? You ask questions so that she would sort of delve into it and tell what it looks like or how it's changing. So I said, okay. So I went home and I told her, I said, I have this process that they gave me to run on you to help you with your cyst. And she said, okay. So I ran the process with that body's hands. You keep that. And it was her diaphragm. She called it her diaphragm because she's a singer. She was a singer. So from going away. And did you keep it from going away? And then I would ask her all those in between questions every 10 or 15 minutes. And it took about 45 minutes to an hour to get to a point where she was feeling better and feeling good about it. And it started out like a lemon, size of a lemon in there, a small lemon. And then by the end of that session, it had reduced down to the size of a grape.
Wow.
It shrunk. And within 2 days, it was gone. And then she went to the doctor and asked about what's going on, and he didn't find anything. So she was right away very impressed, I might say, very impressed with what the result was. And then she came in and did some courses, and eventually she ended up at St. Hill and did the St. Hill Special Briefing course.
Wow.
I just realized something, that when you were telling that story, that a lot of these processes had to do with like really communication. I mean, if you think about that process, it's getting the person in communication with that body part, like really getting a communication and getting it cause over it in terms of like, what is its temperature? What is its size? What is this? And it's kind of like the same thing with the touch assist. You know what I mean? The touch assist in Scientology, where feel my finger, and you're going down the person's body on both sides with their eyes closed, and it's getting the flows going through the body, and it's really a communication. There's a block in the communication somewhere. I mean, that's kind of like the theory. And when you get it back in communication, because the person's a spiritual being in Scientology, you know what I mean? It basically puts them at cause over it again.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's so important, because Ron said, we used to call him Ron, that when you have an injured part of the body, the natural instinct of the being is to move away from it, to push it away, kind of deny it and not pay attention to it, as opposed to moving closer and giving it more attention, which is what's needed. It's very powerful.
Right. Yeah. Mary, that reminds me of when I grew up in our mission in Melbourne. Those are the kind of wins my parents had on their PCs, on their pre-class. The same type of thing, just doing those very basic processes. I mean, my mom even helped bring a guy back from close to dead who he drove off a cliff. And I remember going to the hospital every day and her processing him until he was up and walking. And then my dad did it with someone else in a truck. And very basic.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's simple, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
Right.
And another thing that I didn't mention is that when I first started, and I knew that I was going to continue with this subject after reading all the books and having the win with my mom and getting great results from my first intensive and things like that, I made a postulate. And the postulate was that someday I was going to be working with L. Ron Hubbard, and that I would be a guinea pig for the tech. And within 5 years, I was on the Class 8 course, and we were all his guinea pigs on that course. So that was postulate.
Now, let me ask you, on that Class 8 course, did you get thrown overboard?
3 times.
3 times, okay. I remember watching my mother go over because she didn't get a well done on the session that she gave. So as the 8s, they were all going for those well dones or very well done, so they wouldn't get thrown overboard.
Yes, that's right. That was the penalty for making some kind of error in session.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
Yeah, so I got thrown overboard the first time for laughing, because I thought it was funny that this was a funny way to end up in the Mediterranean. I never was in the Mediterranean before, and now here I was swimming around in the Mediterranean. So I was laughing about that, because it was quite a drop. It was about 30 feet from the aft well deck, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I was lucky the first time anyway, and so then I had to swim around, and I know what happened. They said, you have to laugh before you come back on board. And I said, no, I'm not going to laugh. And then they insisted. And Frankie was one of the people I noticed in the Sea Org that were hanging over the railing saying, Mary, laugh, laugh, come on, laugh. And I said, no, I'm not going to laugh. And then they only wanted me to laugh because I was laughing. And then they wanted me to laugh on purpose to allow me back on the ship. So finally, I just said, ha, ha, ha. And they said, we'll take it. We'll take it. Let her on. Let her on. So, and meanwhile, Ron was up there with the camera the whole time taking pictures of everybody being thrown overboard. I mean, this was not a secret from the old man. As a matter of fact, it was his idea. So I came back up on the gangplank and, I remember, I'm correcting myself a little bit here. The first time when I left, they let me right back on. But then as soon as I arrived back on the ship, they said, now you're being thrown overboard again for laughing. So I got thrown 2 in a row, the same time period, over again. And that's when they wanted me to laugh. So then I laughed, and then they let me back up there. And you had to salute and request permission to come aboard. And then
Mary, let me ask you, did you feel at that time, because Miscavige later took it and made it like very degrading, did you feel like it was a degrading thing, or was it more lighthearted to basically wake you up? Or what was the intention? Like, what was the intention at that time when they were throwing you off the Apollo?
Okay, the first reaction I had was laughter. The second, when they threw me overboard again, I was mad and I wouldn't laugh. I thought it was an insult. I thought it was stupid. Well, I laughed because I was in the Mediterranean. Why couldn't they get that? So I thought this was something a little weird. And then the third time was some outtake from some process later. Oh, I think we were overboard because we did what Ron told us to do. That's right. He said, if you get a read on present time problem, run the process, this process that he gave us. Very simple, incomplete communication. So we were running that, and then we did, and we got thrown overboard for running that process. And we asked the supervisor, how could he throw us overboard for doing what he told us to do? And he said, well, he changed his mind. And I said, and then somebody said, well, we have to read his mind? And the supervisor said, yes. So that was the third time. So it didn't there was illogic. It did not make sense to me. There was something odd about it, off, not clear to me. If it was only that first time, it would have been, okay, this is just some kind of a wild joke that we all have to participate in to show us that he really means business, and we have to get with it. But after a while, it became sort of like sadistic, or I don't know what, that's a strong word, sadistic, but it seemed unnecessary invalidation and a big fuss over something, when really, I had just gotten off the briefing course in the Class 7 internship at St. Hill just about a month before, and they didn't use those tactics at all. So that's not how you learn. As a matter of fact, it seemed like an earlier practice because we were out in the ocean, and when you're at sea, you have your own country kind of thing, and you make your own rules and you do what you feel like it. And later on, I realized that Ron had never really gotten to the point that he wanted to in the Navy, where he wanted to be the commander of everything. And he was sort of mocking up a battle or whatever. I read some early books that friends of mine, that were writing things up, like Bent Carter and some of the other guys. And it just seemed like he was creating an earlier practice type thing, maybe to make up for what he didn't accomplish when he was in the military. But I didn't know how to explain it. I just thought it didn't make any sense, and I tried to find whys for it and what was really going on. But then things happened later on that were kind of a result of that stuff that I'm just talking about. And I had the biggest win of my life as a result of being on the ship with L. Ron Hubbard and being subjected to the Sea Org version of Scientology, which really had nothing to do with the subject whatsoever. Except for the tech part. The tech was good. The tech on the Class 8 course was great. I can't deny that at all. It was great. I'm glad I went. And It was wonderful to be trained by Ron and CS, but his method, things that he used to control us, blah, 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 I did not think were at the level of, didn't come near the level of the real technology.
True. And you know, he didn't recognize that with the SEAL, those people were all there as volunteers. They weren't there as well-paid employees to boss around. And, you know, they were volunteers giving up their lives for $10 a week. But even I got thrown overboard. And Mark, to answer your question on how it felt, to me, it was embarrassing because there you are getting an ethics handling in front of everybody. And I'm one that I hate to get in trouble. And so here, everybody, I'm being exposed to everybody as getting in trouble. Now, on the other flow, I've ordered people overboard. During one of the Class 8 lectures, remember those were in the dining room on B deck? Well, Bob James and Joanne Robertson, I think it was, they started doing a play fight on the stairs coming down from A deck to B deck. And Hubbard, after the lecture, comes out and says to me, "What was that noise?" And I said, "Oh, they were having a play fight on the stairs, but I stopped them." And he says, "You ordered them overboard." And so those were the first two people I ever ordered to go overboard for making a sound during a Class 8 lecture.
Yeah. You know, it was sort of like, to me, it was like piracy. You know, some of the things from early days, earlier practices on the sea, and you had to walk the plank. You know, that's what it reminds me of.
Just like the chain locker. It's like people were thrown in the brig in the Navy for getting drunk coming back. Same on the ship, on the Apollo. They were thrown in the chain locker.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember when Baron Perez was thrown in the chain locker. I was there because we were a week early, and Bill Howie got some kind of punishment or ethics thing on him because he got us there a week early. And so we didn't have anything to do. So they made us make our own packs. We had to make our own packs for the first week for the Class 8 course. So in the middle of all that, and we were sitting down in the dining room or the mess or whatever you want to call it, and Baron Perez was being dragged through the hall into the chain locker. And he was threatening them that he was going to kill them. I'll kill you. And they threw him in and clang, the door closed, and he was in there. I don't know for how long, but, you know, Bill Dice was up in the crow's nest for 3 days.
Well, I remember Baron Perez throwing my dad in the chain locker and watching that happen. My dad was in there, I think, for nearly a week on just bread and water. And that's when he decided he was done. He left the SEAL after that. Right. Good.
Much healthier.
Yeah.
Let me ask you.
Sorry,
can I ask you a question, Mary? Because you did the briefing course at St. Hill, right? You did,
yes.
You know, the brief, just for our people who've never been in Scientology, the briefing course, you listen to all of L. Ron Hubbard's audio tape lectures. They're 90 minutes long, and I forget how many there are, but you do that, and you know, you do auditing and that type of thing, right? But can you explain to our viewers what was the difference between doing Class 6 and then doing a Class 8? What was the Class 8 course on the Apollo? What was that like, and what was the basic end product that they were trying to get from you guys as a Class 8?
Yeah, well, the briefing course was to kind of make us as superb auditors, you know, flawless auditors. And the briefing course had all the tech on it that we needed to give us a firm foundation of what the tech was all about, what was behind it. And listening to all the old man's lectures for hundreds of hours. I mean, there were over 400 lectures that we listened to or more. And then and then of course the Class 7 internship where we learned power processing. And then we had to intern on that. And that's a whole story there. And there's a whole story that I haven't told you about my experiences on the St. Hill Special Briefing course. Right. But the Class 8 course was focus a little bit more on CSing. It wasn't training us directly as CSs because we were the auditors. We were not CSing other sessions, but we were learning about CSing, and we were sent back to our orgs and to our staff positions as case supervisors. We were not sent back really as auditors. We were sent back to CS, and there were about 35 of us.
Explain to our viewers what CS, what case supervising is. What is that?
When you have auditors that are doing what you tell them to do in session, and you're using all the tech that you learned from LRH. So you were starting them maybe on grade 0 or on Dianetics or life repair or something, and you would say, okay, start with getting the rudes in. And we learned for the first time about flying the rudiments, which means getting a floating needle on the meter on all the rudiments, or maybe just one, if that was just one was necessary. And that was new news to the people in the organization. They didn't know about flying the rudes. That was a new phrase that came up. And so we brought that back. I mean, we had to tell and teach the auditors how to do it.
Right. And let me just explain what the rudiments were. That was before taking someone in session, you've got to actually find out if they had an upset of any sort, if they had a problem, or if they were withholding something or had an overt. And you get that out of the way to a floating needle so that their attention can now be on getting the process. Right. Like getting their grade 0, 1, whatever.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention for our viewers who have never been in Scientology, case supervising is basically after each session, the auditor writes up, they're taking notes and of what processes they're running and what the person says and that type of thing. And it all gets written up, put into the folder for the person that's getting the counseling or the auditing. And then that folder is then sent to the case supervisor to review, to see if there were any errors or anything that was missed, and then also to basically approve the next session in terms of what's going to be done. So that's really what you're doing. You're basically overseeing that person, that pre-clear and that auditor to make sure that they're making progress, right?
Exactly. You're running the show. You're making sure all the sessions are being standardly delivered properly. And everything is being done to its proper end result. And I had the biggest experience I ever had in Scientology and in my life was a result of what I went through when I first came back from the Class 8 course. And I was on post as Qual CS. Artie Maren, my husband at that time, was the Tech CS. And so I didn't feel good about invalidating the auditors. I mean, we were using the word flunk a lot, with 15 exclamation points, like this is the end of the world, but you didn't get an FN on ARC break and you started on an upset and you started the major action flunk, and then you would put overboard because we were trained that way by LRH, overboard. And we did showers and AOLA was doing hosing in the backyard. After
you left the Apollo. Wow.
It had to stop.
It's passing it forward and it gets more degraded,
But and it's funny, that happened later, years later, where Hubbard made a comment to David Miscavige to spit on John Axel for me. And then all of a sudden that became the thing where people were spitting on people that they were pissed off at. You know what I mean? It's just whatever. It's just stupid. I was going to say,
it gets more and more.
The other thing that you would do though as a case supervisor is if you went through and you saw that there was an error or mistake, you would then send that auditor to qualifications division where they would get corrected on whatever mistake they made, so that when they went back into their next session, they wouldn't make it again, right?
That was that we were supposed to send them to cramming. We were supposed to send them to be corrected. It was not supposed to be a punishment or a degradation at all. But I collected the charge on that, on my head, that I was participating in something I felt terrible about. And I got a somatic in my leg. I was in terrible pain from this stress that I was under as a case supervisor. So the org decided to send me to AOLA for a review, from New York to LA for a review, because it was nobody, even though we had Artie, we had Bill Tolan, who was also a graduate from the Class A, but it didn't matter. I had to go to AOLA. So I went there. And when I got to AOLA, oh, and I skipped a whole part on the Class A course about this guy, Craig Defan. Craig Defan was a genius. He was a genius. He was so amazing. I mean, he was the only one that could get us on the check sheet and signing our check sheet on the Class A course. The only one. We had about 5 or 6 guys sent down there, maybe more, to get us started on the Class A course, and we couldn't do it. We were just we were paralyzed. We were totally paralyzed because we were invalidated every day by the Commodore's staff people that would come down and insult us and invalidate us and tell us we weren't worth auditing the dog. We shouldn't even audit the dog, things like that. And Craig came down there and pretended to, this is earlier now, I flipped back earlier on the Class A course. He pretended to be like the other assholes, and he jumped up on the desk and he goes, "What the is the matter with you guys? Get rolling on your check sheet. What is the name of that bulletin? ARC breaks. Okay. What is the date of that bulletin? Yes, good. Sign your check sheet. Sign it." And he made everybody sign check sheets by practically nothing, just asking the name of the bulletin or the date, or is he right? Is that right? Yes, pass. Sign your check sheet. And he pretended to be terrible and mad at us like the other guys, but he was really validating us. And we woke up and we became alive, and we had our check sheets all signed up all the way down the page. Not everything, but a lot, a big move forward. And that was, to me, a genius thing that he did, that he pretended to be out of valence in the Sea Org, which was my new definition of suppressive person in my head, was out of valence in the Sea Org, because it used to be, anyway, he was in valence, but he was pretending. So then, valence meaning his own viewpoint, his own personality, his true self. He was being his true self, but pretending not to be. So when I arrived at AOLA, Advanced Organization Los Angeles, to get my review sessions, because I had a pain in my leg, Craig was the CS. He was my CS. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. He's going to know everything that I'm talking about. So I got into session and they were flying rudes on me, rudiments, upset, problem, withhold. And it read on withhold, and the auditor said, "What are you withholding? What is the withhold?" And I said, "Well, I can't tell you. It's a withhold." And he said, "Yeah, but you have to tell me, because we have to get through this and get you in session. So what is it?" I said, "Well, I can't tell you." And he said, "Tell me. It's okay. You can tell me." And I said, "Well, if I tell you, that means I would have to disagree with the old man." And he said, "That's okay. Disagree with the old man and tell me what your withhold is." And I said, "Okay, the withhold is, I disagree with the old man." And he acknowledged me. And I told him why and what I thought was done to the auditors, and that I was now playing it forward of invalidating auditors and making them go in showers and stuff like that and flunking them. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And I disagreed. And so I got well. Instantly, as soon as I got that off in session, my leg pain went away. I was cured. So I finished my review right shortly after that. It was really just out rudiments were out more than anything else. And I got back to the New York org, and there were about 200 staff members that were on staff. It was a big organization. And they were all in this big ballroom, and where we had our staff meetings. And I had the auditors all in the front 2 rows. The auditors had to sit in the front 2 rows. And I got up in front of the entire org, and I said, "For invalidating the most valuable people on the planet, auditors, for flunking them, for overboards, for total invalidation, I stand corrected. And I didn't tell them why. I didn't tell them the story of how I got there. I just said, I stand corrected. From this point forward, there will no longer be any flunks. Nobody's going to be flunked. Nobody's going to be invalidated. You're not going to be sent to ethics for making a mistake in session. Not, we're just going to give you a cram, and you're going to have to get corrected on your mistake, and that's it. So I put the policy back in and got rid of that other crap that had nothing to do with Scientology. And they all went into power. All my auditors, the charge that blew in that room was enormous. And all my auditors went into power within 2 weeks. And Artie couldn't believe it. He was sitting across from me at the other desk in the CS office. You're canceling overboards? You're canceling flunks? I said, yes. You're canceling ethics conditions? I said, yes. It has nothing to do with the tech. I'm only going to send them to cramming. And then I called every CS, every Class 8 that finished the Class 8 course with me on that course and told them what I did. Because in case they were dramatizing the same pass it forward kind of crap, I wanted them to know that at least one person wasn't doing that. And some of them were not dramatizing that. Some of them were just doing regular CSing or regular stuff with cramming and everything, but a lot of them were not. And then what happened was that my folder from Craig and AOLA was sent back to L. Ron Hubbard because he had the Class 8 folders. I mean, that was who he was sending out to the world. So he saw my session. I realized this later on. He saw my session. And within a month or two of that experience that I blew the charge on that, he came out with Ron's Journal 68. And that was a tape, a lecture. And he said, he apologized. He actually apologized to the Class 8 course at that point. He said it wasn't a polite thing to do. You were wearing green jumpsuits. You were running around trying to, do what you had to do as students, and we were throwing you overboard. Or maybe he didn't say those words, but he said the way you were treated wasn't a polite thing to do. And I know it was because of my session that he said that.
That's great. Yeah.
And I realized I had a huge cognition about power. And when you're next to someone that's very powerful and you're trying to be in good standing with them or trying to emulate them in some way, you have to differentiate. You have to realize that they're not perfect. They're not God. And you can have your own integrity and still be loyal or still be learning from the great person that you're working for, but they're not perfect. And you have to be able to separate out from that. And that was a huge lesson for me.
Very true.
Yeah. Janis, did you see that happen with Hubbard? Like when you were a messenger around him where, somebody would point out something maybe that wasn't quite correct that he was telling people to do, and he would change his mind, on anything, on, administrative thing or whatever.
Yeah, that happened many times. Even the liability cruise, we all got assigned liability, but later on he said, that was a wrong condition. It should never have been liability. It should have been more like danger or non-existence, But we went through it and did it. But that has happened. And he's apologized to people for taking incomplete information and acting on it, and I know towards the end, he acted on a lot of incomplete and wrong information and didn't follow his own policy on the data series, on digging in and finding out and look, don't listen.
That's right.
Yeah. He needed a cram.
Yeah, he did.
Artie was on the co-audit. He was one of the students. And we watched him blow a whole bunch of charge, a whole big cognition, something that happened in his session, and he had a round the dial blowdown on this meter that kind of tuned in on everybody in the room. It was a whole bunch of people in the room, and they were all auditing each other. And then Artie And he had to get special. He showed up at the New York org because his friends were coming in or something, and he found out about it, so he thought it was.
So can you explain to our viewers what Artie, was he in the Guardians office, which was working for Mary Sue, like in the 60s, 70s? I mean, what happened? Because, you know, you said he was a CS before that, but how did he get into the Guardians office?
Yeah, well, we were pulled out of New York and flown over to LA. Bob Thomas was the head of the GO, Deputy Guardian United States at that time. Yep. And he decided to dub Artie as head of PR. I don't know why, but that's what he decided. He's going to be DG PR US. That was under Bob. And I was auditing at AOLA, and also Bob wanted me to be his auditor. So I got him as my PC, and a whole bunch of other people on staff at the GO were my PCs at the Guardian office. And the Guardian office is sort of like the CIA for Scientology. I mean, it's got other, it's like the PR department, it's the an intel department, it was the PR, intel, and finance in charge of those areas. So Bob was a good friend of ours. We were even living with him when we first got to LA, because he decided that we would just settle in with him for a while until we found our own place. So he was just appointed into the GO by Bob Thomas, basically. That's how he got started. And he did very well. He did very well on PR.
He did do well. I remember I kept hearing about him on the ship. I'd hear about Artie having to handle different public relations situations. And when Quentin passed away in Las Vegas, Artie was used to handle all the public relations on that. And when we moved to Clearwater and that all blew up, Artie was sent to Clearwater. He was like the troubleshooter for public relations. Any problems, send in Artie.
That's right. He wouldn't tell us that Flag was now established at the Fort Harrison. He wouldn't admit it, but it was in the newspapers. I said, Artie, it's in the paper. Hello, it's in the paper. Everybody knows. He just wouldn't acknowledge it. He wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I was looking for photographs of him when he was a spokesperson, you know, because I remember seeing photographs back in the day. I couldn't find anything on the internet, but I did find an article in the Clearwater Sun when the whole, you know, United Churches is really Scientology, and Artie is the person that's quoted in the article on that.
Yeah. One of the reasons why we broke up, there were several reasons, but one reason was that he tended to follow orders and I did not. I was skeptical or questioning, and
you were a rebel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a maverick. Yes, a maverick.
But Marty was very trusted by Hubbard and Mary Sue.
Artie.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. He was very loyal. Totally. He was. Yeah. He was very valuable to their whole work together, what they were doing together. I mean, he was very valuable. He fulfilled that need very well.
Right.
One of the best things he ever did, the best thing I got from Artie Maren was Latin dancing. I learned Latin dancing from Artie, and he was great. Cuban style. And we used to go up to the Palladium in New York all the time. Every Saturday we go up there and we listen to the live bands that got on the stage playing that beautiful music. And I learned all the dances, everything from him and some of his crazy pothead friends. They were all great dancers.
That's cute.
And I still have that. I still use it in my Zumba classes, which a lot of that is salsa type style. I do Zumba. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
I go to 2 Zumba classes a week and 2 offshoots of Zumba, which is really just a gal there that happens to be a great dancer, and she choreographs to the same type music, but more of a broader spectrum. And she is her own choreographer, and it is totally great to dance. So it's 4 dance classes a week.
That's very good.
I was going to ask, were you ever in the Sea Organization, or like you were at New York Org, right? You were at the New York Org for years, but what was your kind of staff history?
I vowed I would never, ever join the Sea Org. And to back that up, I had LSD, and that saved me. That saved me. I would never.
Yeah, but before that qualification came out, you still managed to avoid it for several years, being at New York Org, and then what? You were delivering at AOLA, which was Sea Org, but you were in there as a non-Sea Org member, and then you were also at Celebrity Center New York.
And LA.
And LA, yeah.
Well, how did that work? I don't even know. Were you just sort of contracted to come in and audit because you were a Class 8, or what was it?
Well, partly it was because I was Class 8. You know, they needed somebody that could do power repairs, and Class 8 type sessions, and the training that I had. And there weren't that many of us at that time, 69, 70. We went to LA in 69. I mean, we were in New York in 68, and then 69 off to LA. So there weren't that many, and there was no enforced requirement for every staff member to be in the Sea Organization. AOLA was Advanced Organization Los Angeles. It wasn't necessarily totally Sea Org, and neither was ASHO. ASHO wasn't necessarily 100% Sea Org at that time. It later became that. So they had people that could come in and be on staff that didn't sign a billion-year contract.
Got it. And then Artie was working in the Guardians office at that time. So you were going to California along with him. Is that right?
Oh, we were taken from New York to LA by Bob Thomas. Yeah. And Artie was put into the GO, and I was auditing, and there wasn't a division in the GO for auditors, but right. I was an auditor. I mean, that was what my hat was. And as a Class 8 auditor, I was more needed at AO than I was in the GO, but I got all these GO people as my PCs.
Right. Let me explain something. I just remembered something. The Guardians office were not Sea Org, right, Janis? There was no requirement that you had to be in the Sea Org. And Mary Sue, as a matter of fact, was the controller, and Jane Kember. They were the ones over the Guardians office. But wasn't there kind of friction between the Guardians office and Sea Org members because of that?
Yes. Well, also the Sea Org would have good people and train them up, and then the Guardians office would try and rip them off. Or else the Sea Org brings in all these org executives and trains them on OEC, FEBC, sends them back to the orgs, and the next thing you know, the Guardians office takes the ED and puts him on as the assistant guardian. You know, so that created a lot of conflict.
There was a lot of conflict, and there was kind of a mutual sort of put down, an invalidation game going on between the Sea Org and the GO. They would, one up all the time on each other.
Yeah.
I noticed that. I noticed that every day because I was auditing them, and then I was auditing at AOLA. So I had both worlds right there in front of me all the time. Yeah.
The other aspect I remember about it was that Guardians office, well, at Flag, they work Sea Org schedule, but a lot of in DC and stuff like that, they didn't work the same hours as the staff. They had more time off, it seemed like, right?
Well, they did technically have more time off, but Bob Thomas, who was a great senior, one of the best seniors I've ever had or been aware of, he actually formed up the GO organization on the foundation hours, which were evenings and weekends, and he paid them separately and gave them the credit of working for 2 orgs, GO Daytime and GO Foundation, and they got paid twice. He did that.
Oh, wow.
And some of them had to change their schedule around because they had outside work to do or whatever. So they could come in the evenings and the weekends. So it was a smart thing on his part to do that.
So when you were auditing, for the Guardians office and also at AOLA or ASH or whatever, you were not staff, but would they pay you to come in and deliver, or how did that work?
Absolutely. I demanded minimum wage. I said, I won't audit for you unless you pay me minimum wage. That's
Yeah,
very
that was
little.
but that was
But it's
standard with
important.
all the non-Sea Org.
Yeah, I mean, I just said you have to pay me. I'm not going to audit for free. You know, if there's an emergency, I'll help out. But I mean, on a regular basis, if I'm on staff, you have to pay me. And they first they said no, and then I said, okay, well, have a nice day. And then said, no, we'll pay you. We'll pay you.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot, Mark. In the LA area, there was a lot of non-Sea Org auditors auditing in ASHO and AOLA and getting paid.
Celebrity Center too, right? Celebrity Center too, right?
Celebrity Center, as far as I know, not like that. They did have some, but not as much as AOLA and ASHO.
Yeah. And then I was at the LA org because the expanded Dynetics course came out that year, about 1972. LRH released the expanded Dynetic course, which had great tech on it, really great. So I went in there and a couple of my friends, and we did that course. And then the study tech also evolved, where we were doing the new version of, oh God, what was it? The PRD, the primary rundown, where you had to look up every word in the dictionary.
Method 1, word clearing, and a primary rundown, yeah.
But it wasn't method 1. It was look up every word. Didn't matter whether you knew it or not. Like the word if, small words, you know, everything. And I had huge case gain and cognitions on just studying the derivations on every word.
My dad did the PRD, and it was you became super literate. That was the certificate.
Yes, super literate. Yes.
Yeah. And then
I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then years later, Mary, I don't know if you were around, but then Key to Life was based on that. You know, the Key to Life that came out, that was all looking up all your words and the derivations and everything. And then the same thing, it was like key to living was communication, you know.
It was great. Yeah, I remember when Key to Life came out. I didn't ever get that course. They sent me out there for it, but they wouldn't give it to me because they needed my folders. They were still with LRH at Flag, and they wouldn't release my folders. So they said, well, if we can't get your folders, we can't put you on the course. So I couldn't get on the course. I don't know.
They probably couldn't find him.
Whatever it was. I'm sure he had the Class 8 folders there, but he didn't want to release them for whatever reason. And maybe it was because of some of the things that I said. You know?
No, Hubbard did not have them, but you got to remember, we had a big storage room on the ship with everyone's PC folders, and then those all would have gotten boxed up and shipped to the Fort Harrison and then put in storage there, and I'm sure no one wanted to go and look through them.
Well, I didn't get the Key to Life because of whatever it was with the folders, So I just, I was sent to do the Key to Life. I was sent there because I was so furious about the finance police coming to our mission at Geltman's. I was working for Helen Geltman, and I was furious. And I said, you can't let them steal your money. You cannot let them take the money. And they knew that I was going to blow a gasket. So they said, what should we do with Mary when the finance police get here? What should we do with her? And one of them said, well, we could put her in the sauna and tell them that she's going through withdrawals, you know. And then they said, no, she'll make a fuss. Let's send her out to California to do the Key to Life course. She'll do that. Wow. So that's how I ended up in California, not able to do the Key to Life course. But I stayed with Karen at her place, and I just had fun staying with her for a while. But over the phone, Irving Pawanski, who happened to be the ED under the mission holder, Helen Geltman, told me that the finance police did come and they did take all the money.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, you mentioned earlier in the video about being a guinea pig, right? You know what I mean? And I raised my hand because we were always guinea pigs. I was on the first purification rundown in Clearwater where we had to wear rubber suits in the sauna. And then 2 days later, they go like, no, you don't have to wear the rubber suits anymore. And you do this and do that, right? And then the same thing with Key to Life. I was on Key to Life. You know, he piloted it, you know, New World Corps or whatever it was out in L.A.
Yes,
and,
right.
And I had to do it, and it wasn't even printed up packs. It was just crazy. And then, Janis, I'm sure you did too. I mean, Happiness Rundown would come out, or you know, whatever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They would just they needed people to do it, just like
experiment.
If you were piloting a medication, and then make corrections on it. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Well, the running program, what's that now called?
Oh, yeah.
What's the running program now called?
Cause something, right?
What was it?
The running program where you run around the pole.
The survival
Janis.
I was the first advice for that. I was so disaffected, and David Mayo had said she was disaffected. She's no longer disaffected, but there's no guarantee she won't be disaffected in the future. So they offloaded me and declared me, and then LRH found out and had me come back and do the running program, and that's the first advice on the running program. Have Janis get out and run.
Yeah, and there was no tree or no pole at that time, right, Janis? You just ran, right?
I just ran. Wherever I felt, down the highway, across the golf course.
Janis, I think it's called the Cause Resurgence Rundown now or something.
Now it's called that, yeah. But it was
it was the running program. I did it.
Yeah.
I did it in Griffith Park, you know, running around a pole 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I mean, unbelievable for 51 days, you know.
Did they call it the survival rundown at one time?
Running.
No, that was different. Survival.
That's a different.
Yes. Wasn't the survival rundown doing the Purif and then doing CCH, you know, like objective, CCHs, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like to get off drugs and stuff.
But I did that original program when it first came over from the world. What was it? The new world something?
World out of Calm.
What you said.
Wook.
No, before that, you called it something. The world something, where it came from.
Oh, New World Corps,
right?
Yeah,
New World Corps, and they came. Those guys were at Flag, and they were running the Purif, and it was just starting, and that's when I did it. And we had to run around the neighborhood. We didn't have a pole or anything.
Janis, you just reminded me of something we haven't talked about. You mentioned that, right? All of this stuff, you know, superpower and all that stuff, it all came from the World Out of Calm evaluation that L. Ron Hubbard did on the gold cine staff at La Quinta. All right. And it was called WOOC, where they shortened it. World Out of Calm became WOOC. WOOC. And so it was always, are you doing WOOC? This is before they called it Key to Life or anything. I'm on WOOC or I'm on this and it's WOOC.
Yeah,
and then it became WOOC for WOGs. It was WOOC for WOGs was going to be the I just remembered this, you know what I mean? And it's just so funny because Hubbard did an evaluation called World Out of Communication. And that's how he came up with looking up the small and common words and doing that. And then there was a grammar book and there was this clay table DPTSing. Do you remember that, Janis? That's right. My God. Anyway, but yeah, it's funny. I had forgotten about that WOOC.
Yeah, I remember that. Anyway, I was telling you about the LA org and how I did the expanded Dianetic course there. And then I had to do the expanded Dianetic course internship at the LA org. So I was auditing at the LA org Dianetics. And I had a supervisor and, oh God, what was his name? He was a great supervisor, very wonderful guy, but didn't last too long in those days because he was so powerful. People were afraid of him on staff, not the public. I'll think of his name. But anyway, he was our supervisor, and they had some crazy people running the LA org at that time who had just recently come back from the FEBC on the ship. And this was 1972. And we had to do Chinese school of the keeping Scientology working. And that made me, and I never, ever, ever could even think about that policy letter again. I hated it so much. I hated Chinese school. I felt totally squashed by that course. Not the course itself, but the way the org was forcing us to do things. And I thought I was an SP. I thought, well, I must be a suppressive person because I hate everything that they're doing. I hate all these people and I hate Chinese school. And I was sobbing and I called Artie. And by that time we were separated because he refused to do the course that he took, the evaluators course, you know, the
data series evaluators.
Data series evaluators course, right. He refused to do that on our marriage. And I knew we needed it and he wouldn't do it. So I left. But anyway, I called him up and I was crying over the phone telling him I was an SP. And he said, no, you're not. I'll come right over. And he came over to where I was in my apartment and he made me stand in front of the mirror and watch myself cry until I started laughing. And he said, if you were an SP, you wouldn't be calling yourself an SP.
That's right. I was going to explain to our viewers, Chinese school is where you had a supervisor stand up in front of the whole class or whatever, and there would be something printed on a blackboard or a chart or whatever, like apples are green, you know what I mean? And so the supervisor would go, apples are green, and then he would say, what is it? And then the whole class would repeat it back. Apples are green. Apples are red. What is it? Apples are red. Whatever it is that's on there. And it's basically repetition to get it in your brain. And they use it all the time in the Sea Org. Yeah.
But what was on that board was not something simple like apples are green. It was always an LRH quote.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a big, long bunch of stuff. And it was horrible, absolutely horrible. But then my supervisor knew that I was doing good as a student because I was auditing and I was doing the proper auditing and everything and in the HGC. So Russ Meadows, who was the CS at the time, I'm sure you remember Russ. He was one of these guys that I did not like. And they used to come down on Monday mornings and tell the class how they got into bar brawls on Friday night. And they were bragging about it and thinking it was such hot stuff. And I thought, what a bunch of jerks. And then I had this MU's method 4 word clearing where you had to sit down and look at the meter and see if you have any reads on misunderstood words. And all I had was a floating needle. I had a persistent ARC break needle. And they said, don't you have any MUs? Don't you have any? And I said, well, I have. And they tried to bull bait me to try to get me to have like a read of some sort and not get me off of my floating needle. And they said, what button do you have? And I said, well, I'll tell you my button, but you can't tell anybody. I'll tell you, I have one button that you can bull bait me on. And they said, what's that? I said, well, I'm a class 8. I was trained by Ron. I've been auditing for all these years, and I still believe in the ARC triangle. And they realized that I was just trying to be a smart ass with them. So they didn't think it was funny. But then they tried to bull bait me on the ARC triangle, and I still had my persistent ARC break needle. So that's how I went through that class. That it was just ridiculous. Anyway, the guy, Marcus Hurst, that was his name, Marcus Hurst. He was a wonderful supervisor. And he was the one who said, okay, Mary, we're going to graduate you. Because by that time I was in tears sitting at his desk saying, oh, they're never going to let me off this course. I finished this course. I did my check sheet. I audited my well-done hours, and they're not letting me graduate. Russ Meadows is not letting me graduate. He said, okay, I'll get him to sign your check sheet by Monday. So that was Friday. So Monday came along, and sure enough, my check sheet was signed. I said, how did you do it? He says, I threatened to put him in the hospital.
Well, that handles it.
That was real to him. That was real to him. So they were going to ComEv Marcus, and he said, oh, when are you ComEving me? Saturday. Well, Saturday's not a good day because that's my laundry day. And he wouldn't go because he was too busy doing his laundry. He says, do whatever you have to do. He was a Vietnam vet, and he was an interrogator. There was nothing that they could do to him from the Sea Org perspective that was more brutal than what he went through in Vietnam.
Exactly. Those vets were tough.
Those are great stories, and we really appreciate you coming on again. At this point in time, we're going to have you on again, of course, but I wanted to promote Janis's books. This is her first book here, Commoner's Messenger, Book 1. That's Janis right there at the age of, I always forget, it's 12 or 13, walking with L. Ron Hubbard on the Apollo. 13 years old, walking with L. Ron Hubbard. Janis is one of the original messengers for Hubbard. And this is book 1 that she has. And then this is book 2. And this is when she was a teenager. These are the covers of the book. And this is the history of Janis's time with L. Ron Hubbard. She spent probably more time with Hubbard than most people ever did. 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, all through her teenage years. And anyway, she tells her story. There's lots of photographs from being on the Flagship Apollo and being with L. Ron Hubbard and all that. So you can get your autographed copies of book 1 and book 2. Just go down to our merchandise store, click on the link in the description, and you can get an autographed copy sent to you in the United States from Janis. And it's a great read if you haven't read it already. It's also a great gift if you want to give it away and all that. I just wanted to promote that for you, Janis. Because you put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, and if people don't want an autographed book and they just want the book to read it or listen to it on audio, book 1 is on audio. Book 2, I'm working on that. But you can just go to Amazon and get it.
That's right. That's right. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Janis likes to say, rock slam that like button and hit that notification button. That helps the algorithm get our videos out to other people who have never seen them before. So we really appreciate that support when you subscribe to our channel. If you've got any questions or comments about what we talked about today with Mary, please go down below and we read them all and we will answer your questions and any comments that you might have. And then also, if you'd like to support our channel, in the video description, there's a link to buy me a coffee. You can buy us a coffee. It's basically a way to contribute money to the channel, and it covers our expenses for putting on these videos. So we appreciate all the support that we get from people. That's basically it for this video. I've really enjoyed it. How about you, Mary and Janis?
Lots of fun. I'm having a blast.
It is lots of fun. Yeah.
Good.
It is fun.
Good.
All right. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.